Okay.
This session's being recorded, and I'm gonna take a picture.
Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
So you didn't take any notes from the net sheet that I gave you last time, right?
No, I didn't.
Just wanted to make sure you wanted questions, so. Okay, so in your guys' package, we're going to be going over the HUD1. Can I have one? No. Absolutely not. Okay, so on the first page, it is basically just an overview of what each section is, without actually looking at the HUD, letting you know what each one of those blocks on the HUD is and what it is on each page. So on the first page, it is basically going over the very first top portion, which you'll see on the second page of your packet. You'll see where it's going over the 100 block.
Super eyes. You have super eyes?
The 100 block is basically going to go over what your sales price is. If your property has personal property that's going to be included inside of it, like if you have a mobile home that's on land that's not inside of a park, a mobile home is personal property. It's not actual real estate. So you would see that in that line item. So when you see certain things in that spot, that's going to let you know that it's not your typical residential sale, okay? Below that is going to be any other offsets, like if we are paying for a first installment of taxes, or if there's any certain prorations that have to be done, they'll be in that location of the video. And you'll see that it's the 100 block and the 400 block. The 100 block is for the buyer side, 400 block is for the seller side. And it's going to be that when we go down through all of the blocks. So if you go down to the 200 block, this is going to be the one that you guys are going to look at most commonly. In those sections is where you are going to see any offsets. So a 3% credit for closing costs, you're going to see it in the 200 and 500 block. If you guys are, if the seller's paying for the owner's policy or the escrow fee or anything like that, we're going to put the offsets in those screens, but the charge will be on the second page of the actual HUD. Below that is, depending on the way that the taxes are prorated, they might be listed down there depending on if they have been paid by the seller or not been paid by the seller. Okay?
I don't think HUDs are fun to look at. I mean, honestly. I'm glad they're changing them because they are really actually a confusing document.
Yeah. The ones before 2010 were a lot easier to read. Once 2010 hit, they made it more complicated.
And then we're switching again.
Right. And then August 1st, we're making it totally different. And so below the 200 and 500 block is where we get into 300 and 600 block. That's where you're going to see if your buyer needs to come in with any money or if they're getting a refund, and vice versa for the seller side, depending on what situation the seller's in. You're going to see that they're either going to bring in money or they're going to be receiving money. Okay? On the second page of the HUD, I think that just means that we're actually being recorded.
Don't be nervous.
I don't want to. Okay, so on the second page in the 700 block, that's your guys' block. That's your guys' paycheck.
Ooh, yay, the best one.
The best one, right? So in that column, you're going to see that that is going just specifically for the real estate commission. So that's going to be where you're going to see the two different sides if you're not double-ending the actual file. If there's any other fees that we're going to be charged, it's going to show in the 700 block. If you guys had a TC fee, we can put it in the 700 block, or we can put it in another block, which is the 1300, depending on the way that the lender needs it to read. Or if there's another additional, like, co-listing that's not with your company, that was through a different company, you guys are going to co-list rather than do a referral fee, we can also put them in there. That's more common when you're looking at, like an REO property, a bank-owned property. They have their own management companies they want to see in that same block, so sometimes you'll see 3 different things in there rather than just the typical 2. The 800 block of the HUD, that is where we go into the fees specific for the loan. That's going to be any of the fees associated with the loan are always going to be in that 800 block. If they do go past that 808 line, you'll see verbiage on the bottom that says "be attached." And at the very end of the HUD, there'll be an additional page that automatically populates, and the rest of the fees will actually go in there. Okay? Basically just going to go over the origination charge, if there was an appraisal fee, a credit report fee, any of those fees, they're going to show in that 800 block. The only time that they're not going to show in the 800 block is if the lender is allowing the client to choose for themselves a certain company, and so at that point they'll ask us to put it sometimes in the 1300 block. So sometimes you see loan fees in the 1300 block depending on the way the lender needs it to read. Okay. The 900 block is the interest that's going to be charged to your client depending on when the escrow closes. If they're getting an FHA loan, you're going to see mortgage insurance for the upfront in there. If they're getting a VA loan, the VA funding fee will be in that location. And if they're getting a USDA loan and they're going through an actual lender and not straight through USDA, you'll see a guarantee fee in that section as well. In there is also where you're going to see a full year's worth of insurance paid up front. There's flood insurance that's required. It will be in this location. All of those are in that one specific location. The 1000 block is going over if your client has a impounding representing the buyer. So that's going to be going over what is going to be included inside of their monthly payment above and beyond their principal and interest. So if they're impounding for county taxes, if we're in a different part of the state and there's city taxes, those will be impounded in there as well for them. Their homeowner's insurance, if flood insurance is required in the location, then the flood insurance can also be impounded. It really just depends on the way that their loan is set up. If they don't have impounds, then they won't be there.
If their lender did good or not, this is where the questions come up. I'm not. Why is this the fee?
Exactly.
Right.
Why are you pre-collecting for 5 months for my taxes when my taxes aren't due until, this date? And the part that they don't understand is they have to have enough money in the account to make sure that they have enough money to pay when that bill comes due, or else then they go negative in the escrow account, and that's not really fun.
Huge deal.
Yeah. So it's a lot easier for everybody if they just pre-collect it and you just have it as part of your down payment rather than chasing for more money or anything like that. A lot easier that way. The 1100 block, that's us, that's title and escrow. So that's where you're going to see all of our fees. Our escrow fee is going to be in there, but the way that the HUD works is that they lump it all into the larger numbers, which is why most of us really like the net sheet because it's a lot easier to read and you can see every single one of the charges rather than having to flip to a totally separate page of the HUD to find them. But that's where you're going to see in the actual column, in the gray portion, it'll actually list out how much was for lender's insurance. That way you can tell the difference for what the client's actually being charged for. This is one of the ones that, depending on the lender, and if we were selected by the client or if we weren't selected by the client, that is going to either be in the 10%, which is the big thing with the HUD, you have to be within a 10% area. That's one of the ones that may be able to be moved to the bottom or the top of it, and we'll go over that in a minute, but that's one of the ones where they're going to be moving those numbers as close as possible on them. The 1200 block is going over the recording charges, transfer tax, if there's city transfer tax, any of those fees. So those are all fees that aren't charged by the title company, but those are fees that are charged specifically by the recorder's office. So we go based upon whatever the recorder needs us to go ahead and charge for those. Okay. The 1300 block is all the other bills. So that's your natural hazard, your pest report. If there's a roof certification that's needed, if they want a full home inspection and the home inspector doesn't require to be paid up front, any of those other charges, the other bills that be paid, they're all going to be in the 1300 block. And just like the other lines, if they go past 1305, they're going to roll over to a separate page on the back and they're all going to be listed out for you. On page 3 of the HUD, this is the part that the lenders look at the most when it comes to asset closing, is like we were going over that the title fees, they sometimes play into the 10% that the lenders are required about, and you see that in the second block. At the very bottom it says increase between GFE and HUD1 charges. That's going over what they originally said that everything was going to cost on the GFE, what they were estimating for them, a good faith, and then what the HUD actually reads. So in that block, they have to be within a 10% variance. If they go above and beyond that 10% variance, that's a problem. So that's why they really ask that all the fees and everything are upfront, correct, and sometimes even throw a pest inspection in there. So if you say that there's going to be a pest inspection and there's a re-inspect and it can throw that number off. It's all those different things, which is what we talked about last time about communication, making sure that we know what's going to happen. That way the lenders aren't having to redisclose at the last minute and causing a delay, because nobody wants a 3-day delay for them to have to redisclose and all that fun stuff. The very top block, those figures cannot change. So if they actually said that, meaning they can go up, if they said that, you know, the origination cost was going to be $1,200, they can't go above that $1,200 without it actually costing, because then at that point they're going to have to get a cure for it. Charges that can change, that's usually where you see the title and escrow stuff, just for the fact of that's the way it was disclosed to the client. And there's where you're going to see the daily interest, what they estimated for the homeowner's insurance in the very beginning, all those different variances depending on the way the loan was actually set up. The bottom portion of page 3 is the one that you might actually get the most questions about, or that's the most beneficial when you have the final HUD. Because if your client comes to you a month and goes, I don't remember, do I have a prepay or not? That information is all on this back page. It lets you know what their interest rate is. It lets you know how long they're in for their loan. Can their interest rate rise? Are they going to have a balloon payment? It answers the most typical questions of your buyer when it comes to, I know I signed everything and I know what my payment is, but I don't remember what that part means, or if we did or if we didn't. I know that some people said that's not common right now. This will give you those answers. But it's also a good reference for them, because they should have this information as well. And they can easily just look at this one document, see what all their charges are, and see if they have a prepay or anything like that.
Because they get this notice.
Right. It depends on your broker. Sometimes your brokers require that, yes, you have a HUD1 at the end. Sometimes the settlement statement is just sufficient. But the client always has this. They have a HUD and they always have a net sheet. The only time they're going to have a HUD is if there's a loan. If it's cash, there's no such thing as the HUD, because the HUD is actually for the lender. Okay. Do you guys have any questions on the boxes?
She's got a real one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just to kind of give you an idea of what boxes mean, and then I have ones for you guys to actually look at and see where the numbers are and kind of get a better feel for how it's actually going to look when you have a true transaction.
That's good.
I know.
Because the one question I don't have, but often I have people question, is the boxes for, at the bottom of the first page, the boxes for from or to.
And
People,
that,
you X the box, and they're like, which side? And
honestly,
it makes sense to me, but
that
apparently it's a very common question.
It is a very common question, because the difference with it is that it all depends on if the taxes have been paid or have not been paid, is depending on the way that we have to prorate. It's either going to pull from your buyer or going to give it to your buyer. So in that case, it goes into a different block, either the top block or the bottom block, depending on the way that it is. So yeah, that's a really common thing to find out, well, who does that go to and who does it not go to. And that's why this one is a really good guide, because on the very front, it actually tells you from the client to the client. It gives you a better idea of exactly what that means. This packet is actual numbers. This one is technically a short sale. It's all made up. Nobody's real stuff, but it's going over how everything is actually going to look when you guys receive a HUD or a net sheet. That way you can kind of understand and see what the differences are between the two documents. The very first page is a net sheet. This is one that I gave you last time. So it's going over what a typical short sale net sheet would look like, which is the easiest one to read. The HUD is more difficult, but it is the easiest one.
It's just something else.
So this one is very easy because it literally has a column for a credit and a column for a debit. So there is no wish-wash on, well, is that being given to me or taken away from me? It's very clear. So this one's basically going over that we're in a short sale situation. They're selling it for $200,000. The seller is paying for the county transfer tax. They're paying for the owner's policy and half of the escrow fee. So you see those charges on that settlement statement. So then when you look at the HUD behind it, you can be in the 200 and 500 screen, those exact same numbers going to and from each party. So you see the difference between what the net sheet says, seller charge for $220, $839, and $350, $750. And then you look in the 200 and 500 screen, and that's where this is where people get confused. how it says the 357, the 220, and the 839. It says it on both sides because it's taking away from the seller and giving it to the buyer. People get confused on which way that one's going to go. So in that screen, those are 500 is always taking away from your seller. 200 is always giving to your buyer. Okay?
So random.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. And I get it.
And then on your net sheet, it goes down to the next bold area, which is the prorations. So this says that the seller is getting charged for the prorations for the taxes. If the seller is getting charged for the proration of the taxes, that means that your buyer is going to see the entire tax installment on their side credit from the seller, which is where they get really confused. So when you flip back over to the first page of the HUD, you're going to see in the 200 block at the bottom where it says items unpaid by seller, 580.82. That means your buyer is getting a credit from the seller. And you'll see in the 500 block, on the second part of the 500 block, you see the 580.82. That's coming up from the seller. Here's the part where the buyer gets confused. If you look in the 100 block, you'll see first installment of taxes, and it'll show for the full amount. So when they see that screen, this first page, a lot of times they think that they're getting charged $1,000 and they're getting charged $580.82. But in all actuality, 200 block, even though it's in two separate sections, that is a credit to your buyer. Okay? Does that make sense? If it was the other way around, if the seller was paying for the tax and the buyer was being charged for those, you would see in the 100 block where it says adjustments for items paid by the seller, the prorations in the 200 block would be in the 100 block. And that means your client is getting charged for it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Until you get confused, I know.
Right,
I know.
right.
I get it. Until the next one.
And then you're actually doing it, and then
Right.
it's like,
Truly,
Yeah.
it makes sense. You see
Mhm.
the way they work it out, but it really is something else.
It is. Then we go back to our next sheet, and it goes over the commission. So you'll see that it's the 6,000 and the 6,000. You're going to see that on the second page of your HUD. And you're going to see it in the 700 block at the very top.
Like
Okay?
your favorite program.
Right? Means you're getting paid.
Yep.
If it's not there, if you see nothing in 700 block and you have a seller side HUD, there's a problem. Because that means we don't know to pay you. or we don't know how much to pay you. So we haven't put a number in there yet. So
like,
Something's wrong. Your file's wrong.
yeah.
wrong.
So always make sure you remember in there that it's right. Like I said, we can also put the TC fee in that location. So you'll see on line 704, it says TC fee. It's coming from the buyer, but it's still going to be in that section because it's technically commission. That makes sense. Okay. So you're not going to see that on your net sheet because it's not being charged to your seller. Buyer charge, but it's still going to show in the 700 block because it's a commission-based item, okay? The payoff for the 185,653.68, that will be on your very first page of your HUD in the 500 block because the 500 block means that it's taking it away from your seller, okay? Excuse me. On your next one, the title and escrow charges, the notary fee of $50. Even though the seller is paying for the title and escrow and transfer, they're doing it in the offsets, so that's why it's not going to show down here where it says title and escrow charges, which is another way that people get confused. They're saying, well, I was supposed to pay for title and escrow, it's not down here. Well, it's because their lender needed it to be charged to the buyer to show correctly in the GFE portion on page 3. So we had to charge the buyer and credit them from the seller. Another way that people get confused. Because it's so much fun, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you know the notary fee of $50. When you go to your second page of your HUD in the 1100 block, which is our charges, yay, we get a paycheck too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see only the $50 on the seller side, even though it has all the buyer's charges because those are still our fees as well. It's only going to show the $50 for your seller, okay? And then disbursements paid. Anytime that you see disbursements paid on your net sheet, easiest way to remember, anything there is just like any of the bills. So any of the bills in the 1300 block. So those will always be in your 1300 block to make sure that you have all the invoices into us. So let's say that we got our HUD approved from the lender, and we want to make sure that you guys have a chance to review it too to make sure everything is correct. Sometimes we might send you a net sheet, which is most of the time. Every once in a while, we might send you a HUD without thinking about it. So if you need to know if your bills are in there, 1300 block is going to tell you if you have all of your inspections and stuff to us, because if we don't have it in there, that means we don't have a bill in our hand or know that there should be a bill. Okay. Now, seeing with real numbers, does it make more sense? Seeing the ins and outs the way that it's clear, but it's not clear?
Clear as mud.
Yeah, exactly. Where it makes sense because we go over all the numbers right this moment, but on the next one, it might just look a little bit different.
When we don't have your narrative going on.
Going, this means this means this. Yes. Which is why it is very easy to use the net sheet, because it's very easy to see your guys' ins and outs. It's very easy to go over that. But your clients are going to want to know, I got this form, it says it's a HUD. What does that mean? And they're going to ask you. And so it's really good if you guys know those spots, the main ones that are really going to affect you the most. That way you can speak intelligently to them about those sections. And if not, do what we do when we don't have an answer right off the bat. You know what? Give me just a minute. Let me go find that answer for you. And that's when you call us and we tell you. And then you can call your client back.
Yes.
That way, you guys are still having that communication with your client, and they feel comfortable with knowing that you can always get them that answer. You guys have any questions on the form?
No, when we go through it.
I know, right?
I will, but.
And that's just it. It's one of those things where it really is a hands-on type of a document, because, like we talked about, every transaction is different. Every transaction is going to be handled differently. So, yeah, this one was a short sale, so the next one's going to look a little bit different, because that payoff is maybe going to be an equity sale, which means that payoff's only $100,000. So then you're going to see money to your client on the bottom. It's going to look a little bit different. So that's where it really is. Every transaction is so different. It's a hands-on learning curve. The whole point is just so that you guys feel a little bit more comfortable, or at least have the resources when that question does come up. You have these, and it gives you that information as fast as possible so you guys can get that answer.
And these will be great when the changes were occurring in August, because you can take this form, and if it tells you on some of the forms that we're going to be handing out where this is going on the new stuff. So that'll be good references for you guys to go over. Because it's all going to be the new stuff just as much as still learning this old.
Because we're going to be learning it the same way that you guys are. It's all going to be through the trial and error.
Do you explain HUDs to clients, like the math? Because I've had, they want to see the math. Those C people, they want to know
it really
the
does
math.
depend on the client. Some clients literally just want us to go over the net sheet, and as long as they see that certain numbers are the same here, they're. Other clients do want to sit down, and we do have calculators in our signing rooms for a reason, and we are more than happy to go through that, because it's a stressful process. I would want to know where all of my dollars were going. I would want to know that they were going to the correct places and that the person sitting across from me really did have everything correct. We don't mind if they double check us. It's their house. It's their money. Of course, it's a tangible thing. And so, yeah, we don't mind at all. We do have calculators sitting right in the room for that reason, because it does happen.
Huge deal. If they're not comfortable signing it, I wouldn't need to.
No,
Exactly.
I've tried doing the numbers over the phone, and I'm like, I can't point to it.
Right, exactly.
So
That's
it's
okay.
13 and a half.
It
Trying to
is.
explain how the numbers add up and how you have to start on the second page.
Yeah, well, because when you look at the first page, it says all of a sudden this $12,000 number, and they don't know where this is coming from.
Yeah.
It's coming from the total of page 2. And so they don't see that, but that's how basically the 500 block is their whole thing.
Mhm.
It's going over what all those charges were, what their payoff is, and what title and escrow that they're paying, and if they're paying any operations, and that's how it's all right in one block. But a lot of people don't understand that part, that the 1200 block is everything from this page.
Yeah.
So it can be really confusing when they see 12,000 here and 12,000. Well, then that doesn't make any sense. Why are you charging 24,000?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're adding the two numbers together rather than realizing that it's the same number.
Yeah.
Because it's a big deal. That's a lot of money. That's not a drop in the bucket. I would be a little concerned too if I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
So, but no, we're more than happy. And just like we have clients who want every document, they want to understand it. Buying a house is a big deal. They want to know where their money is going, that they are, putting themselves out there for. It's the same thing, and that's what our job is. That's what we're there for, is to make them feel comfortable. If they don't feel comfortable, then they shouldn't sign the document. They need to take a step back, and that's fine. We're more than happy to reschedule if they need to. I mean, that's their prerogative.
So it's good when we have I wouldn't say difficult, but maybe a more inquisitive client that wants, if you get those high C clients, they want to know every single detail. How hard is it if we bring those in face to face with you? Is that never a good thing?
That's
or is that
perfectly
always
fine.
good for
We would much rather them prefer to
Yeah.
ask the questions. Like I said last time, you guys are the experts at what you guys do. I don't know all of your forms in and out. I mean, I can get the gist, but I couldn't speak intelligently to every single one of these forms. Same thing vice versa. We're experts at what we do. So if they have questions, we would much rather them come to us either by phone, email, sit in front of us, and talk. And that's
I don't
fine.
know how they agree about that, but I'm more comfortable with that because I do feel you're the expert. And then if I could explain the basics, but if they're really a high C type individual,
And we
they're going
would
to want
much rather
another
them be
breakdown.
comfortable.
So I'd rather come in person with you and sit down with them.
It would be just like the client trying to get their homeowner's insurance. They're not going to come to you for their homeowner's insurance or expect you to be an expert on all the different items you might need pertaining to that specific item. Same thing. We do title insurance. We know that part in and out. Come to us. Ask us the questions. We do not mind at all. We are more than happy to break out time for the client.
Great. So there's our answer, girls.
You pass it on. Yes, pass it on.
Honestly, because it makes them feel more comfortable because then we can put them at ease with the information and get what their actual concern is.
And they should be asking the questions.
Of course, it's a very big deal. Selling or buying a house is a large thing in somebody's life. They should be questioning it and just be sitting back and hoping that everything works out. It's a good thing for them to ask those questions, and so we're more than happy to help with that.
If you guys, once you get, just like you were saying, and when you know you have that client, give us a heads up once you open that escrow. Just say, you know what, give this person this much more attention due to what I'm seeing in them, like your analytical side. Go over this stuff with them, and the girls will do it. They'll just take care of it.
Or same vice versa. If you have a client who would much rather literally just speak with one person, and they just want to speak with you, and they want you to have the answers, let us know. That way we're not bombarding them or calling or asking questions. Let us know that they want to just go directly with me, that kind of a thing, because we might scare them. We might intimidate them. I mean, everybody's different. Sometimes kid gloves are needed because they're already overwhelmed with everything else. Let us know that. That way we're treating them the way that they are needing to be, go through the process to keep them as calm and okay with everything. We don't want to rattle anything by making a phone call that they may or may not actually need. So it's one of those things. If you let us know what the needs of the client are, then we can meet them.
You can meet those.
Exactly.
One of the other things, just because I know, have you gone over what the general provisions are that their clients get when we open escrow? We hand out, your clients get mailed general provisions the minute we open escrow, your buyers will. And so that's just something I wanted Connie to go over with you. So when your clients go, I got this huge package from First American. So,
And they do.
And they have no idea.
It's not little. It's quite substantial. There's their own copies in there, plus there's ones back to us. And then right after that, they get another package that's their prelim. Why do I have all these things? Not even there yet. I'm still trying to get my loans, that kind of stuff. So it's a large packet. Inside of those general provisions, a lot of it is our terminology. What escrow means, what close of escrow means, because in different states it means something different. Going over if there's funds held, if there's fees that are going to come along with that, what we actually do as title and escrow. It's a really good reference for them to actually go over so that they have an understanding of what we're doing. Because a lot of times they don't know what title is, they don't know what escrow is, they don't know what any of that is. This is information that we're going to get to them up front. That way they have an understanding of what First American is, what our job is, what our terminology is, if there are any fees that are going to be associated with different items, It's going to be overall that. It's a 4-page document, and they do sign it when we actually sign them at closing, but it does go out to them in the beginning for them to review and look it over and also acknowledge it. If they go up front, then we don't have to get it at the end. But it's a really good thing for them to go over because the first page, a lot of it is, the terminology, but then behind it, it's more information about what title insurance is and that kind of stuff. So if they get that and they're confused, call us and we will schedule an appointment, either over the phone, they can come sit down, and we are more than happy to go page by page with them and go over it. We do it all day long. It's perfectly fine. So never think that that's out of the ordinary.
That's why I wanted you guys to understand what it was too. They really do. It's a packet.
Yeah, it's about that thick, and then they get their copies behind it, and then they get the prelim. So, paper.
The faster they get it back to us, though, it will help in the closings.
Yep.
So
It doesn't delay
to know
anything.
what it is. It's information. It's that what there's stuff we do need.
Right.
So
I
tell them not to be afraid.
Yeah.
I
Which is-
try to say there's a sense of urgency, but some people are like, don't make it sound urgent. I'm like, it is.
It is, yeah. And just like we talked about, it's all about communication. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to communicate with them from the instant that we have opened that escrow. That way they know who we are, how to get a hold of us, what information we're going to need for them to actually, be able to close. That way they're not running around at the end when they're already out enough at the end. It's one less thing for them to have to worry about. So that's the whole point, is to try and get it out to them as soon as possible so that they have an understanding.
A lot of times the lender hasn't prepared them for what title and escrow is as well.
Right.
So that's a lot of the communication. So we're trying to do it too. So
Mhm.
we really do get hit from all sides when they're
Yeah,
purchasing a
They
home.
do.
It's a huge deal. Poor people, by the time they're done, they're usually like,
Yeah, by the time they get to us, it's pretty well, are we done? Can we be done? When do I get my keys?
I know.
Yeah.
You guys show up with those
It's
keys,
like
they're thrilled.
Yeah, they're so excited at that point. Yeah.
Anything else? No more papers.
Yes.
Exhausted and want to move. So.
And then at the end, after we close, then they get another packet from us, which is their owner's policy. So it's just paper.
And it's just paper. But
It's paper,
yeah.
but it's very important paper. They need to hold on to that paper. Do not tell them to ever get rid of that owner's policy. They need that paper.
Super important.
But it is another packet from First American that they're getting. So they might call you because, why did I get another one? I'm closed escrow. It's their owner's policy. They really need it, and they pay
They
for
need
it. So
that. Yeah.
Are you guys all Facebook friends with me? I just posted a video about the owner's title policy. Actually, a funny one. Okay, owner's title policy, and Noelle's going to teach on this. It really is an important one for you guys to watch or to learn about what it is and how it works and everything. It's a huge deal, so I recommend this class for sure. But it's just a little ditty, the video on here. It's actually pleasant to watch. It's not horrid. I'm sure there's nothing exciting about an owner's title policy.
No.
And teaching it,
there's no way to jazz it up.
and he's going to do fantastic.
Yeah.
Definitely go learn what he's talking about. It's a huge deal going forward and what's going to be happening. So there's a video on my site or on my Facebook page that I'll repost it too, so it's up top. If you haven't watched it, it's funny. And Earl was doing it too. I heard Heidi stepping around. You're supposed to. Those are our stomach rumbling.
It's Janelle's.
I know.
Okay,
So-
do you have any questions?
No, thank you guys for coming over.
You're welcome.
Good. Thank you.
Of course, and if you guys do, after you have time to sit down and kind of let this gel a little bit more, if you guys have any questions, give us a call.
Or if you're in a transaction, don't hesitate to call too, because we can go over it as well. Actually, let me rephrase that. Connie can go over that with you.
Just kidding. I handle this part, she handles that part.
They're the experts. I refuse to. I'm not. I actually understand. I was a processor, so I get it.
Yeah.
But that is they're experts at it. So.
Do you have any cards? I don't think I have a card.
Yeah, I think I have them out in the car. I think I have them.
I'll add one thing to it. Probably doesn't pertain to this, but I know when I was setting up my first AM and getting all my numbers aligned, so when I do,
So your net
I have to do a net
sheets
sheet.
actually
Connie came in. She came in. She sat down with me. We went through. She helped me set mine up where it's like defaults. Am I explaining that correctly? Awesome. And it explained a lot to me there, and I learned a lot just from sitting down with her doing that. So
Great.
not to add to your work.
And I
but-
love your next escrow.
Yes, please. I do have one, but I wanted Connie, because she's been my favorite with her and Janelle both. I do have one in escrow with First American.
Is that
First
from
But
America?
it's still First
No.
American.
I was gonna say, First American.
My buyers were already new, you know, so she
Thank you
used
for
to
that.
be in loans years ago, so.
That's
she knows
perfect,
a
though,
lot
as long
of
as
you
it's that
ladies.
First American.
So,
Well, great. Thank you for that.
all right. Thank you guys. That's awesome.
You go chat with
And tell her to push the button? Yeah. Turn it off from recording now?
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Your remote
touch
silent at
anything.
this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it's kind of a small area here.
Sometimes that
We came in here, like, no, we have 2 little rooms to do stuff with clients, and the one time that I had clients in here, I put them in the kitchen. Where am I gonna put my client? Did you come in here? We were out there because this was taken. I'll go grab your cards, I'll be right back. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. How do we get in? Oh, she comes to. Oh, got it.